Hello, my name is Jetta Lazoya and I am a fourth year environmental engineering student. Today I am here with Professor Sybil Derrible.
Hi everyone, I'm Sybil Derrible. I'm a professor at UIC. I've been here for the past 12, 13 years. I am a urban engineer focusing on infrastructure writ large. So transportation by background, but I've been doing a lot of work with stormwater management and water distribution, electricity, solid waste, gas, telecom, every civil infrastructure systems.
Okay, thank you for taking the time today to be a part of this interview. I have a couple questions for you. The first question is, what inspired you to pursue a career in civil environmental engineering?
That's a great question. Why civil engineering, right? I mean, there's civil and environmental. And there's so many engineering disciplines. I think like most people, when I was a teenager, I had no idea. I was pretty good at math and physics, and I liked engineering. So I went into engineering. I picked mechanical for some reason, just because I had no idea. And I liked the program. I enjoyed my experience there, but I wanted my work to be closer to society. And so that's why I switched then. When I went to grad school, I switched to civil engineering with a focus more on transportation engineering. And then within that, when I did that, I was in a group where we were looking at sustainable and resilient cities. And I really enjoyed that, which is why I then expanded from transportation engineering to, again, water, stormwater, and environmental, but also electricity, telecom, everything pretty much about cities, so that in the next 20, 30, 50, 100 years, we can live in a city where infrastructure is a bit more sustainable and more resilient.
Yeah, that's why I definitely love civil engineering as a student, how applicable it is and how we can be a part of the community as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. Second question, how has civil or environmental engineering industry evolved since you started?
So I started very recently, right? 12 years. I know it sounds like a long time, but it's not. But it's evolved a lot. When I first started, you still had to convince people that sustainability was something that was not, sustainability is not a constraint. It's just a way that we can do everything in a way that's a bit more efficient. And so it's completely changed on that level in transportation, but also in water. And I've seen a big shift in stormwater management. Mm-hmm. So cities flood, how you deal with that flooding has completely changed. 12 years ago, we're starting to talk about green infrastructure. Many cities did not want to invest into green infrastructure. But since then, they've really seen the benefits. And I'm seeing now that worldwide, cities are completely changing the way that they handle flooding through stormwater infrastructure, through green infrastructure, which has many other benefits. Higher economy, higher well-being, a lower ambient air temperature, lower energy use, all of that, which is thanks to flooding cities at the beginning, right? How we help cities not to flood, all that had many benefits beyond flooding.
Yeah. Definitely in my hydraulic classes, I didn't realize how big of an issue flooding is here in Chicago. So I see that it could be like a worldwide problem all around. So absolutely. Yeah, definitely very important. Definitely important. What inspired you to become a professor, and was teaching part of the plan, or did it happen unexpectedly?
So absolutely unexpectedly. My parents don't have high school degrees.
Oh, okay.
I was good in math. I went to engineering. I had heard the term PhD. I don't think I knew what it meant.
Yeah. And
during a summer there, I just stayed in school and I didn't want to go back home. I'm from a very small place. I just wanted to stay around. My undergrad was in London in the UK. So I'm French, but I did my undergrad in London, the UK. And so I stayed there, and the best way to stay there was to find some kind of a job. I worked for one of the professors there, and I'd worked on something very different on polymers, nothing to do with cities. But I just fell in love with research. And I fell in love with the fact that, so when you take a class, you're forced to learn something and to show that you've learned it. When you do research, it's fun. You learn a lot of things, but it's fun. It's not something where you do it for a grade. And so I really loved it, and which is why I wanted to go to grad school, to do a PhD. During the PhD, I loved the research. By the time I was there, I had no idea really whether I wanted to become a professor or not. But by the time I finished, it was obvious. It's just my life. I love doing research. I love teaching. I love being surrounded by a lot of energy, and that's what students bring. All that youth really brings a lot of energy to a department. So I just love, all of it. And I never, ever thought about it when I was a teenager.
Okay, as a follow-up question, would you highly recommend undergrad students to pursue research opportunities if they arise?
100%.
Okay.
If you are in a university that's not teaching, where they do research, you must get involved in research. At least you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Research is, the joke. What's the joke? It's people we find people who search, but we search people who find. As in, there's a lot of research. Nobody knows what research is until you actually start doing it. So get involved. See if it's for you, and don't ever think that it's for straight A students. I was not a straight A student. Most professors were not straight A students. We're just very curious people. And once you apply your energy and your curiosity towards research, everything takes a completely different meaning. So get involved with research.
Okay, thank you. What's one memorable interaction you've had with a student that has stuck with you over the years?
That's a great question. There's one student in particular, I think it was the first semester I taught here. It was water resources engineering, the first or the second one. And that was in 2012. So the Iraq war was still, going on, it was at the end, and we had a veteran. And what he told me, I still remember. So what he told me was that he graduated from high school, didn't really do anything, got into the army, and then when he was in Baghdad, what he would do was they would seal off a neighborhood. He would just stand there. They would seal off, they would get all the stuff out, and then they would put concrete walls around it so they can rebuild inside. And so he was just standing there on the concrete wall to make sure it was drying properly and to make sure that no one was putting a bomb into it. And by looking at the people building the civil infrastructure there and just standing and looking at them, he knew that once he finished, he would join a civil engineering program. And so he came to UIC and now he's doing great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. If you could leave one lasting impact on the field of engineering, what would you want it to be?
One lasting impact. That's a great question. I'm a very, very big advocate for multifunctional infrastructure. One of my biggest problems with engineering education right now is that we try to make you specialize in one area. We ask you, do you want to go into transportation or structural or water? It's like, well, when you look at cities, it's not just roads or just buildings or just water pipes or just, it's everything together. And there's ways now where you can build infrastructure that does multiple things. Even when you think of a road is not just a road for cars, it's for cars, but also for stormwater, right? You have the gutters, and then you have all the pipes, the conduits, and everything below it. But usually we don't do it in a harmonious, coherent together, But there's ways that you can really think about infrastructure in a multifunctional way. So green infrastructure is like that. One of my favorite examples is in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. There they have, Kuala Lumpur is Malaysia, tropics, huge rains, flooding problems. Second one is, it's a big city, traffic problems. So they built a tunnel for cars, except that when it rains a lot, they block traffic, no more cars, and they flood the entire tunnel with stormwater. So one infrastructure solving two problems. I absolutely love that. So multifunctional infrastructure, I think is the one thing I would like people to consider. And that's partly why, I'll even show you, that's partly why I wrote this book. The infrastructure book doesn't talk about multifunctional infrastructure, but it talks about all infrastructures separately. So, and once you learn about that, you start to see the connections. And then as an engineer, you can start to, again, think of infrastructure that doesn't do only one thing, but multiple things.
Hey, thank you. I guess now, since you mentioned your book, the infrastructure book takes readers on a journey through 16 different cities worldwide. Which city surprised you the most in terms of how it handles infrastructure and why?
That's a great question. So yes, I'll take it again. The infrastructure book, that's my call to the public to learn about infrastructure, because the infrastructure dictates your life. Infrastructure provides or denies opportunities. Whether your neighborhood floods is an infrastructure problem. Whether you can get somewhere when there's a lot of traffic, no traffic, transit options, sidewalks, it's an infrastructure problem. Whether you want to travel somewhere and take some time off, it's an infrastructure problem. And I see that more and more people don't really understand how it works. They don't know how infrastructure, they don't know how water is treated. And then when you have a crisis, you're like, why do we have a crisis? Well, learn how we treat water. And then you'll understand. And then as the public, as a resident of a place, you can have a voice and say, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the future of infrastructure. So in that book, my favorite example is in Seoul. I give you now, I give away. So it's spoilers. So spoiler alert.
Okay.
What happens in Seoul, and I love that story, it's my favorite story in the whole world, is Seoul, Korean War in the 1950s, stopped, and then South Korea boomed. The number of people, the population really increased. And at that time, 1960s, 70s, really one of the biggest things that was happening in terms of infrastructure was roads and highways, because the car was there. So they built a massive double-story expressway in one neighborhood. It used to be a small stream. They displaced the people, they covered the stream, and they put a double-story expressway to make way for the future, which was the car. As in probably every case, whenever you have an expressway like this, it got packed very quickly. The noise level was unbearable. The traffic was bad. Air quality was bad. So almost as soon as it was built, it was a problem. And in the 1990s, the mayor at the time, mayoral candidate, ran to knock it down. That mayor won. They knocked it down a few years after, and they restored the stream. And if you go now, so instead of that big expressway, you don't have anything, you just have the stream, but it's below the ground level. And again, it's there because it's a linear park. It's really nice, and there's a lot of greenery, but also they flood it whenever it rains a lot. And so I love that story because it was a transportation problem that gave us a water solution. And I think that's the way engineers should think now. Instead of saying, well, you know, that's my right of way, I'm a transport person, it's gotta stay transport, or I'm a water person, it's gotta stay water. It's like, no, at the end of the day, we have all this infrastructure, we're trying to provide better lives to the people. Let's think of how we can best use that space for the people. And in Seoul, what happened is that transportation problem became a water solution. And traffic didn't become worse. Actually, traffic got better over time because they invested in transit, people adapted, they changed when they left, maybe they changed jobs, so everything was fine. But you know, if you want to learn more, read the book.
Okay, and one last question for you today. How do you see sustainability shaping the future of engineering?
I mean, sustainability is everything. So what is sustainability? Most people see sustainability as an environmental problem. I don't. Sustainability is about, you have this resource, how can you use it in a way that you're not too dependent on it forever if you don't have access to it? My biggest example with sustainability is being a student. When you're a student, you're paying a lot of money to get a degree. You being a student for all your entire life is not sustainable. At some point, you need to make money, right? You need to earn some money. So you're okay, you know, using that money to get an education, and then you're going to make money. Same thing with sustainability, with resources, with a lot of things that we have. If we're life depend on one thing, do we have enough of it forever? No. Then we need to change the way we do things. We try to do things that are more sustainable so we can sustain over time, which includes traffic. So for example, even if we remove all cars, all gasoline cars, and we put all electric cars, then there's no emissions or different sort of emissions, but we still have chronic congestion. And chronic congestion is a real problem for a place, for the economy. So we've got to think about more sustainable solutions. If we pump too much water from a well, then something is going to happen. We need to think of, you know, different strategies to be able to make sure that we can provide enough water for people in the future. So sustainability is, it sounds like it's a area, like you have engineering and sustainability, but no, sustainability is just good engineering. It's just good planning, because we make do with what we have to make sure that we're not generating problems for people in the future.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Hey, thank you everybody for watching our first professor interview. Keep an eye out for future professor interviews. Definitely look at our ASCE social media platforms here at UIC. And thank you so much, Professor Sybil Derrible, once again for taking the time to interview.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for having me.
Okay, thank you.